Genesis 1 says that God did not create life himself. In verse 20, God says, "Let the waters bring forth the moving creature that has life." In verse 24, God says, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature." So we see that God endowed nature to do the work of creating life, because water and earth taken together add up to what? Nature. But what does equipping nature really mean? God overrode the laws of chance or probability so that totally improbable things could happen without waiting the amount of time that would be in keeping with that total improbability. Example: the nose on the ancestor of the whale moved to the top of the head of the whale. This is totally improbable, yet it happened. It became what is called the blowhole. The blowhole of a whale is the nose of the whale, but instead of being on the face of the whale, it's on the top of his head. God overrode the laws of chance, just like Jesus did in regard to another sea creature. In Matthew 17, verse 27, Peter finds a coin in the fish's mouth, not after looking through the mouths of 10,000 fish, but the mouth of the very first fish. This was a miracle performed by Christ, showing that he had the power to override the laws of probability. I repeat or reiterate, when Genesis 1, verse 20 and 24 says that God blessed nature with supernatural ability beyond the norm, it may mean he tampered with the laws of probability or set them aside, because that is his prerogative as the creator. I told this to people at church, and someone had the nerve to look up some other verses that say that God created the fish and the fowl and so forth. My answer is, of course, there are verses that say that, but those verses are simply the summary verses. They say God created, but they don't explain how. I'm saying that verse 20 and 24 are the explanatory verses. They give us the insight into the method by which God created life, namely by setting aside certain laws of nature or probability or chance. My emphasis is, or what I want to get across, is that God did not stoop down and take a pile of clay into his hands and form a shape of a bear or a lion, and then breathe into the nostrils of this clay figure, and then make it come alive. No, nothing so childish. Nothing so childish. Young earth creationists, to the contrary, notwithstanding, they may think that's how God did it, but verses 20 and 24 refute that conception. P.S. Not only does Genesis 1 talk about the origin of life, it even explains how speciation took place, the creating of the various species. It says that God arranged for each creature, each kind of creatures, to reproduce according to their own kind. That's all it says. That's it. But it says that great abundance of life forms came forth without any further mechanism to account for speciation. In other words, creating according to kind equals the answer as far as how speciation took place. It doesn't say creating only according to kind. So this allows for, this opens the door for the concept that creating according to kind actually is the tip of the iceberg, and that much more than creating according to kind was taking place. Namely, creating new species very seldom, like say one time out of 1,000 generations, like say 99.99% of the time, it would be according to kind, but that's one fraction of the time new species would come forth. I'm going to write a transcript in the description box, so please make a paper copy, because EMP is going to destroy the grid and computers, but if you have it on paper, you'll be able to preserve it. EMP occurs when Russia bombs America, which happens because we have disarmed, and it will fulfill Revelation 13:7, which speaks of the Antichrist making war against the Christian countries and taking over the world. And then Christ will come and take the world back. The tribulation period will only be 5 months. That's Revelation 9, verse 5, and verse 10. I'm expecting the tribulation, to begin this year. The Feast of Tabernacles is my guess. That's in October. If it happens at that time, it will finish around the time of Purim, which is in, like, say, early March. Purim is Purim. It's the celebration of the defeat of a type of the Antichrist, Haman. Look it up in the book of Esther in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures.